Well, welcome to 4.5, our last section in chapter 4. And we're going to do interest rates. This is a pretty short section, but this is really pretty important. And it's very pertinent to percentages. So we talked about percentages, and now we're going to deal with financial literacy and interest rates. Now, a lot of students get confused between interest rate and interest. Interest itself is just simply dollars. So if you borrow $100 and you have to pay back $105 in the end, the $5 is the interest that you paid. It's the fee you're charged for borrowing money. Welcome to the real world, right? Well, an interest rate is a percentage. Notice the word rate, right? Meaning it has units on the top and units on the bottom. So it is a ratio. And an interest rate is interest, which is dollars, right? In this case, it would be $5, divided by the amount borrowed. In this case, it would be $100. And an interest rate is, in this case, 5%. Let me give you another interest rate. Here's an interest rate of 7%. What that means is that for every $100 that you borrow, you have to pay interest of $7. Now, that doesn't mean you borrowed $100. It just means for every 100 that you borrow. So if you borrowed $200, for example, you would pay $14 in interest. Notice the equivalency between those two. So you're not responsible for this, but I want to go over it because it's a good example. So it says you spend $500 using your credit card in December for holiday gifts. On January 1st, you receive $500, a bill for $500, but you only have $25 to pay on that bill. If they charge you an interest rate of 2% each month, how much interest will they charge you on the $475 balance? Now, you're assuming no new charges, right? So that's what you owe, you're carrying on your bill. Now, 2% interest rate means for every $2 you have to pay interest of $2 on every $100 that you spend. That's what it means. And this is a monthly rate. To get the actual, it's called the annual percentage rate, which is the number on your credit card, the rate on your credit card. You'd have to take 2% and multiply it by 12, and you would get 24%. So that's the annual interest rate on your card. So to determine how much you're going to pay for the month, you can do it one of two ways. You can just simply take 2% of 475, which you could also put in like this. Because these are the same. Or you can set up a proportion and say, well, I'm paying for every $100, I'm paying $2 this month on what I owe. Therefore, how much am I paying if I owe $475? So you can set up two ratios and these form a proportion, right? And we can cross multiply 100 times x equals 2 times 475. Divide by 100. Divide by 100. You probably know how to cross multiply, hopefully. And I'm going to get, for both of these, or for all three of them, I'm going to get $9, right? 475 divided by 100 is 4.75 times 2 is 8, 950 it looks like. And I'll check that on my calculator to make sure. So that's what you would pay for the month's interest. So here's the first one you're responsible for, 4.20420A. Okay, so it says you spend $1,800 using your credit card on spring break in Florida. This is post-COVID. Receive a bill for $1,800 and then immediately make a minimum payment of 3% on your balance. What is your minimum payment based on your balance of $1,800? So I am going to do this two ways, right? I owe $1,800 and I make a 3%, or you make a 3% minimum payment. So the two ways of doing that are, you can just say, I want to find 3% of $1,800. And you can certainly just put it in your calculator that way. Or if you like to work with decimals, you could put it in your calculator this way. Now, if you want to do it with the proportion, which is kind of nice in a way because it gets you to really understand what 3% means in terms of interest. So 3% means $3 in interest for every $100 in balance. Interest, balance. And that's proportional to, you don't know how much interest on $1,800 balance. I'll just put a B. So in this case, you would cross multiply and divide. So this method is a little bit longer, but you can see they're all an equivalent way of doing this problem. So, I don't know, I can do this one. 1,800 divided by 100 is 18. 18 times 3 is 54. So that's a nice thing that we learned from before. Same thing here, 18 divided by 100. 1,800 divided by 100 is 18. 18 times 3 is 54. So your minimum payment would be $54. So how much do you owe after you pay the minimum balance? Well, it was $1,800 that you charged, and you paid off $54 before when the bill came due. So it's just that, which is $1,746. So after you made the $54 minimum payment, you now owe $1,746. The APR, which means, and this is an important word, right? It's the annual percentage rate. So an annual percentage rate of 25.6, just to review, means that for every $100 you borrow, you're going to pay $25.60 per year. So if you borrow $300, you would pay 3 times that. You know, these are equivalent fractions. You can look at it that way, which would be 75, 76, 80, I think. but that's just an example. So that's what 25.6% annual percentage rate means. Your monthly interest rate obviously is not going to be as high as this because there's 12 months in a year. So you can just take the 25.6 and divide it by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. And you're going to get a percentage because, you know. And round it to the nearest hundredth, this is 2.13%. So how much interest will be charged for the month of April? And I'm going to again do this two ways. I'm going to be charged $2.13 for every $100 that I borrowed. So how much am I going to be charged if my amount that I borrowed is $17.46? I'm not including the $54 because you paid that on time, so you're not charged interest. So I cross multiply here and I get 2.13 times 1746 equals, cross multiplying, 100 times x, divide both sides by 100, divide both sides by 100, put that in our calculator, put it on pause, and I'm getting 3719. X is 3719, rounded to the nearest penny. And that's dollars, right? So that's how much interest I would be charged on the balance of 1746. Now, of course, another way of doing this, again, now you got to be careful with the decimals, because really the decimal is just 2.13 over 100 times 1746. And I'm, of course, going to get 37.19. But a lot of students like to turn this into a decimal, which is fine, but be careful, right? Dividing by 100 moves the decimal two places. So it's 0.0213 times 1746, and you'll get the same thing. So we only have two more examples left, okay? So using a beginning balance of $1,500 and an APR of $18.24 and a minimum payment of $45, complete the following table. Now here we're assuming that you owe the $1,500 for a month, and so you're going to pay the interest on the balance, and then you're going to make a minimum payment, and then you're going to get a new balance. So we're going to do this for 2 months. So first I'm going to put I owe $1,500 after the first month. So I'm going to put that right there, $1,500. That comes from right here. Now for my interest, this is monthly, right? These are months. This is an annual percentage rate. So I need to find the monthly percentage rate. So there's 12 months in a year, so it's going to be 1.52%. I got on my calculator. So that's my monthly interest rate, which is 1/12, right? Dividing by 12 is the same thing as taking 1/12. 1/12 of the yearly interest is the monthly interest. So this one I'm going to do by finding 1.52% of 1,500, the interest. So I owe 1,500, and I want to find 1.52% of that number. Of course, you can also just do this, 0.0152, which is just this number converted into a decimal. So we need our calculators for this. So when you put it on pause, get out your calculator, make sure you're understanding this. 1,500 times 1.52 divided by 100. And I'm getting $22.80 in interest for the month. So I'm going to put that there. Now my monthly payment is $45. So now I'm going to determine my balance at the end of the first month. So how would you do that? Give it some thought. So I am getting $1,477.80. Now how did I get that? Well, it's $1,500. That's what you owe. The man gets paid his $22.80. But you can take off the $45 that you paid to give you your new balance. Now the new balance, the balance at the end of month 1 is the same as the balance at the beginning of month 2. My interest is not going to be the same because I don't owe as much money. It's going to be a little bit less, right? So my interest here, 1477.80 times, again, my monthly interest rate, 1.52 over 100, and put that in your calculator. 1477.80 times 1.52 divided by 100, and I'm getting $22.46. Again, my monthly payment is going to be $45. That's what I pay. So now I need the balance at the end of month 2. So I would do that by, I'll put the 2246 here. I take 1477.80 and I add to that what I have been charged in interest for borrowing that money. And I'm going to subtract the $45 that I made towards my balance. So that's 1477.80 plus 22.46 minus $45. I'm getting 1455.26. And I'll put that here. And of course this would go on, right? And I think hopefully you can see that this is really best suited, if you're going to run this through, it's best suited to use Excel. Otherwise it's just really time consuming. So this is the flip side. Here, instead of borrowing, you're investing, which means you're putting money into something that's going to give you a return on your money. So you're putting $2,500 in a bond fund. And a bond fund is, bonds are issued by cities, municipalities, townships, states, when they want to make some kind of capital investment. Oftentimes it's very expensive, so they'll issue a bond. Like if you want, your township wanted to have a new water supply for the township, they would issue a bond to pay for it over a longer period of time. And here is the interest rate. Notice that this is an annual percentage rate. And they're going to be giving you interest each year on your investment. Now notice how this works. You invested $2,500. At the end of the first year, you got $155 in interest, and they add the balance and the interest to the new balance. at the beginning of year 2 is the same balance at the end of year 1. In year 2 now you receive more interest because they owed you more money. And so there's your new balance at the end of year 2. And the same thing with year 3. Now for year 4, what is your starting balance? And you should have said, well, it's 29.94.43. So you have 29.94.43. Now, how much interest are you going to get in year 4 based upon your new balance this year of this? And you should say, well, I need to multiply that and find 6.2% of this number, which I can just simply do right here and put that in my calculator. So that's 29.94.43 times 6.2 over 100. And I get 185.65. $185.65. Now I would add these two together. This is my beginning balance at the beginning of year 4. That's how much interest I made during year 4. And I add them together, and this is how much my initial $2,500 bond is now worth after 4 years of investment, which is 2994.43 plus 185.65. And I'm going to have $3,180.08. So that's how much I have at the end of 4 years. Now what goes here at the beginning of the 5th year? And you should answer, well, it's the same as the end of the 4th year. Now I'm going to find the interest I'm going to receive on the amount of money I'm owed for the 5th year. And I can do that 2 ways. I'll do it both. The quickest way, of course, is 3180 times 6.2 over 100. And I get 3180 times 6.2 divided by 100. I'm getting $190.80. So that can't be quite right. 3180.08 first of all. 3180.08 times 6.2 over 100. Always good to check your work, right? I'm getting 197.16. So that's 197.16. The reason I knew it was a mistake because I see it's going between year 3 and 4 went up by $11. And let's start at year 1. At first it's $155 in interest, then it goes up by like $9. Then it goes up by over $10 the next year. Then my interest goes up by almost $11. So it makes sense now it's going to go up by $12. It's not linear. It doesn't go up by the same amount every year because this is compounding the interest, which means that it is growing. 3180.08 plus 197.16. I'm going to add those together. And I'm getting 3377.24. So that's what I would owe. That's what they would owe me at the end of 5 years. Now notice these are years over here. That's why I'm using the APR. I'm not dividing by 12 because these are not months. These are years. So this one I'm going to, number one, I'm going to leave to you because I did this a few times in the lesson video. So this one, compute the daily interest rate if the annual percentage rate is 26.9. Now this one I'll help you with a little bit by giving you a hint. There are 365 days in a year. So think about what you do in here and then apply it to what you're doing there. What is the APR if the monthly interest rate is that? Now, hopefully you'll be able to get that one too, but I'll give you a hint down here on 4. What is the APR, the annual percentage rate, if the daily interest rate is this? And this would be every day I'm paying that much interest, and there are times 365 days in a year, and so that would be my APR. So it's really going one way or going the other. So I'm going to get you started on 5 here. Here is the balance. You need to find the interest. This is the payment you're making on the balance, and then you got a new balance. So here's the annual percentage rate. First thing we need to do is find a periodic interest rate. That's what it's called. Another way of saying this would be, because we are dealing with the credit card, which is monthly, we're going to have a monthly. You could also call this the monthly interest rate. So how would we do that? Well, we take 26.9% and take 1/12 of it. Same thing as divided by 12. And I'm getting 2.24. That's rounded. That's good enough. And that's a percentage, right? So for the first interest, I want $2,900. I'll do it this way: $2.24 in interest for every $100 that you borrow. Interest over balance. And that's got to be equal to, I don't know how much interest over my $2,900 that I borrowed or I owe. Cross multiply and divide. Another way of doing that is to just, notice what you're going to wind up doing. You're multiplying 2,900 times 2.24, and then you're going to divide by 100. So 2,900 times 2.24 divided by 100. So it's the same thing, finding 2.24 of 2,900. So I'll put that in my calculator. 2,900 times 2.24 divided by 100. And I'm getting 64.96. That's how much interest I'm going to pay. Now I'm going to find out my new balance, right? It's going to be my old balance. Add the interest in, because that's what you have to pay. That's what they're charging you to borrow. Nothing's free in life, right? Minus 90. Oops. And I'll put that in here. So 2,900 plus 64.96 minus 90. And I'm getting 2,874.96. 2,874.96. Now my balance, beginning balance of month 2 is going to be 2,874.96. And I'll leave the rest to you. So this one we haven't talked about, so I'll go over it a little bit. Number 6, Pfizer, which was the first company to come out with the coronavirus vaccine, right? The stock was priced at $44.25 per share, and it pays interest when you buy shares. So for each share you have, it pays 43 cents in dividends per share every quarter. And that means, well, there's 12 months in a year, if you divide it into quarters, it's every 3 months. So every 3 months, they pay you 43 cents for every share that you own. What's the yield per share? So the yield is 43 interest. A dividend is just basically interest on a stock. 43 cents for every $44.25. Dividend over cost, right? And I'm going to put that as some number over 100 to get the interest rate. Or you could just divide this and move the decimal, but maybe this is better. So I cross multiply. I'm going to get 43.43 times 100 equals 44.25 times X. I'll let you figure that out from there. And that's going to be not the annual, but the quarterly. So what do you have, once you get that rate, what do you have to multiply it by to get the APR, the annual percentage rate? And if you guessed 4, you'd be correct. So there's your payday loan. Charged 80 in interest. What was your monthly interest rate? Interest divided by balance. And that's going to give you your monthly rate, right? And from there, if you multiply it by 12, you'll get your annual percentage rate, and it's going to be way over 100%.